Hey everybody, it's Quilt Babble Live with Lisa and Rona. I'm just telling you now, Rona, we're feeling pretty professional here tonight. It looks like we're making it happen.
Well, we're attempting to anyway.
Exactly. Okay, normally, guys, at this stage, we give a couple minutes for Rona and everybody to share this to their social media. So I'm always blabbing. So I just want to say hello. Welcome to Quilt Babble Live. This is the place where we celebrate quilting, creativity, and community. As you guys know, I'm Lisa, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host Rona. And tonight we have a episode with a big topic. It's something that is affecting quilters, fabric suppliers, the entire crafting industry. We're talking about the closure of JoAnn Fabrics, tariff changes, and what this means today and moving forward. So, guys, I just want to remind you as you're listening tonight, please comment in the chats. Feel free to share your stories and thoughts. But, guys, please remember this is a politic-free zone. Quilting and crafting is our happy place, and we want to keep it that way. I'm just saying. Now, with that being said, we have two guest members with us tonight. We're not saying, they are experts in their field. I mean, that's funny saying we are saying. That's horrible, right? There's so much to unpack tonight, but for Rona and I, we brought on some help. We've got Brian with Lewis and Irene Fabrics, and Kathy with Springs Creative, and also Kathy has designed her own fabric. So with that being said, everybody say hi to Kathy and Brian.
Hello.
How are you two doing tonight?
We're good. Good.
Okay, before we get started, I have to say something. And I've been saving this. I didn't even say this in the pre-show thing either. Is that, okay, so this has come full circle. I don't know, Kathy, if you remember this, and I can't remember, Brian, if you were on that episode with us or not, but it was our Christmas episode in 2022. So it was 2.5 years ago. I had just moved into this house literally that day. We had unloaded the truck. I changed my clothes, cleaned up, and got on to Quilt Babble for our Christmas episode. And today, what we did today is we loaded the truck because we're now moving to Nevada. So we've come complete full circle. And I just thought that was funny. So
funny or sad, I'm just saying. Karen, thanks for tuning in with us. And I see a big old hi to Kathy. Karen, Kathy, I'm assuming that's someone that you know.
Yeah. What?
Karen, do you think what?
She didn't know she had fans.
I can't pronounce Karen's last name. I'm not even gonna try.
Bombshell.
Oh, Karen. Okay. Oh my God. I'm a big fan of Karen. Okay. I didn't even see her down there. Love her. I took her class. She got me into oh my God, all my artwork that I'm doing now. I took her class and she's fantastic.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. Okay, guys, we are going to jump in. I'm just saying. So with everything, there's so much to talk about. JoAnn may be closing, but Quilters isn't. We're here to stitch together insights, opportunities with a whole lot of heart tonight. But with that being said, we all know that JoAnn has been a household name for crafters for decades now. To be honest with you guys, I didn't realize how long they had been in the business. But with the bankruptcy forcing all the store closures, we're all facing a major shift in the industry. But that's not the only thing. We're also navigating some fluid changes and tariffs that could impact fabric and notions cost and the ability to get those things. So before we start talking about this, I want to talk about the experience here tonight on the panel. I'm going to start with me, and then I'm going to go to Rona, Brian, and Kathy. So we're going to calculate all of this. I personally, as a crafting consumer, have at least 40 years experience and about 10 to 12 years of quilt industry research and shop owner experience. So Rona, what is your experience that you're going to add to those numbers I've already given?
Out for the being in the quilting world. Well, I've been crafting in my entire life. So I've been crafting my entire life. But in the quilting specific, I've been quilting for about 15 years, and in the business, 7 years. So yeah.
Okay. So I'm not even going to add your years to, I'm saying 40. We all know I'm older than 40, but as a crafter consumer, but we're already looking at, I mean, we're past 100 now with mine and your years added together. So Brian, what about you?
So for me, 28 years, believe it or not, which is hard to even say out loud sometimes, but 28 years, 18 of which has been completely in the fabric side of the business.
Now, remind me, I think you said on one of the Babbles that you attended somewhere in our 2 to 3 year history. Didn't you work at Springs Creative before going out on your own with Lewis and Irene?
That's right. I did. Me and Kathy worked together at Springs.
Yep.
And then Springs Creative.
That's what I thought.
We both, well, Kathy got her start a little bit earlier than me, but we both, you know, me and Kathy actually met each other at Springs in the bedding side of the business. So
yes.
Interesting. Okay, Kathy, how many years as a craft consumer and how many years in the fabric industry side of it?
I hate to say it, but I think it's over 50 because I started when I started sewing in grade school, and I was a consumer with JoAnn Fabric. That's where I would go and shop and get all my fabrics. It was more on the apparel side, but I've been sewing since I was probably in 7th or 8th grade, probably earlier. And then I started quilting in the 90s, but I didn't really get into it until I moved down here in 1998. I moved in South Carolina. Springs hired me as a textile designer. So yeah.
So as everybody can see,
oh my God. Yeah.
I know, right? I did the same thing, Kathy. When I was counting my time, I was like, wow. I mean, technically I could probably go back to the saying I was a crafter at age 2, because I can remember my grandmother teaching me how to crochet, you know, 2 to 3 years old. So yeah, there's a lot of years there. But guys, as you all can see, there's tons of history here, and hopefully we can break down some of the things tonight and give some reassurance that the quilting industry will continue to stand. That is what it is all about. So I just want to say, and Kathy kind of touched on this earlier, but for JoAnn's, we said it is a household name, basically. For me, it was always the go-to place for the last minute for whatever supplies I needed for any type of craft, really. Definitely some non-quilting fabric, you know, upholstery fabric was probably one of the first fabrics I ever bought at JoAnn's. But, you know, and also their workshops, you know, that they would have. So with that being said, I would love to hear, you know, from all you guys, and I'll start with Rona yet again, something that JoAnn has meant to you. I know Rona, as someone who has not only worked at JoAnn's previously, I do remember that, but has traveled far and wide visiting quilt shops. I'm sure you have some unique perspectives on the role of JoAnn's played in the crafting community. What is your personal memories, and what is your thoughts in regards to JoAnn's closing?
Well, so first of all, my history with JoAnn's, I did work there. I worked at 2 different stores, one in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one out in Monroe, North Carolina. And it was because of JoAnn's and working there that I ended up in the quilting industry as a business owner and going out on my own, because I was a teacher there. I also ran the education department at the Charlotte store. And it was my students that encouraged me to, you know, hey, you're doing all the patterns and doing all this stuff. So as far as the travel industry and traveling all around, I will say whenever I was on the road at going to a guild or teaching at a show or something like that, I would inevitably leave something at home that I needed for the workshop. And I knew that if there was a JoAnn's there, I could just run in and pick it up if I needed it. If it was a notion, if it was some extra fabric, it was something, then I knew that they would have it. So from that aspect of it, that makes me sad that they're going away, because we don't have that, oh, hey, I can just run down and grab this. You know, there's other shops out there, but they're not the same. And sorry, that's my dogs finishing dinner. If you can hear the clanging in the background.
He's probably like, you packed up my food. You packed up my food. So, Brian, I'm going to go to you next in regards to JoAnn's. I cannot imagine being the only male in a house of 3 other females that you have not had to do some stops into JoAnn's for yarn or some type of crafty something. What is your experience?
All kind of crafty, but I tell you, really, for me, the nostalgia for me is on the other side of the coin. Not so much as a consumer, but just as a somebody in the industry. And so friendships, really, it's what honestly kind of sticks out. A lot of just fantastic people at JoAnn's that I consider, very dear friends. And so I think my heart breaks for them. I think, they had a lot of pride in their company, and to see this kind of come to fruition is sad, and certainly we hate that for them.
Absolutely. Kathy, I've left you to last intentionally because I know there's a personal side of JoAnn's for you, but considering who you have worked for many years, you guys, to my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, but are definitely the business that you work for is one of the main suppliers for JoAnn. So give us a little personal side as a craft consumer, and then on the business side, like Brian is saying, give us some of your thoughts and feelings.
On the personal side, I think, again, like what Rona had said, that it was definitely a go-to place. Anytime I would run out of something, thread, patterns, actually, because I do a lot of dress patterns and things. And I think that was one thing that I really go to a lot, because I could just sit there and look through their books, getting their patterns. I'm going to miss that. Even their books and things like that, just a one-stop shop. So like, I'm going to miss having that, especially in the quilt shop, because, you don't have apparel fabric. So I'm really concerned about those who do apparel, where we're going to start shopping. I mean, I know we can go online. On a business side, it is sad, and especially with, like Brian said, he and I have been working with these people at JoAnn, had the opportunity to go to their store, their home in Ohio. So seeing, just knowing all those people that work there, it's kind of sad. And like knowing all the people that have been working there, and, just great people, like Brian said. And then on the business side where I'm at right now, definitely it took a huge bite out of our business right now, because as you know, we're one of the biggest suppliers there. And just seeing that and us scrambling around trying to figure it all out now, but we have a solution. So we're working on one.
We're going to talk about the scramble in just a little bit for sure. But, this is why I love everybody's story, because as soon as you said flipping through the pattern books, the apparel, I don't make clothes. Everybody knows I do not make clothes. It is something that I really want to at least dabble in a little bit. But I grew up with my grandmothers, my aunts, and definitely my mother making clothes. My mom made almost all of my clothes. I don't even know how old I was when she finally stopped. But I loved going and looking at patterns with her. And I still, to this day, I could never go into JoAnn's. Short of I was in a hurry, that I wouldn't have to flip through some pattern, apparel pattern book.
You know what? Even when I was working there, I would still, and same thing, I don't do clothes, but I would still flip through the books because I loved looking at the different patterns that were coming out, but also because they included bag patterns in some of them, and they had like kids, like stuffed animals and all kinds of different things. And then especially when my first granddaughter came around, I'm looking for like diaper bag patterns and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally crazy, but we don't even have to say it, but it's definitely leaving a gap, especially for those that are in smaller towns where, the quilt shops, and of course we're going to talk quilt because this is Quilt Babble Live. I mean, among the other craft stuff, obviously, but in smaller towns where quilt shops aren't as accessible. And with this, we're wondering, how will quilters adapt? And so we're going to talk about that some for sure. I will say we received a message from, one of our serendipitous citizens, and they were saying that they depended on JoAnn's for affordable fabric because they do a lot of charity quilts. And it was just a great way to get, good quality fabric that was relevant. Definitely, Kathy, I know you mentioned before about the licensure type fabrics.
Yeah.
And they were just talking about, with JoAnn's closing, they were going to have to rethink how they were going to source some of those, fabrics. Yeah. So do you have anything to add to that, Kathy, that you're allowed to say in regard to, you do?
Yeah, actually I am. And I can say it now because we just launched it. Especially with Springs Creative, we have the entertainment license, which is Disney, Marvel, all those fabrics. Well, with JoAnn, closing, we were stuck with a lot of inventory because it's not going to the shops. So we are now shopping online. So it's springscreative.com and you can get your fabrics online now. We're doing direct to consumer. So it is,
Nice.
the prices are higher than JoAnn, unfortunately, but you can get your Marvel and entertainment license. And then once that runs out, we're going to do digital printing. So it'll be direct to consumer and you can pick out your designs and digitally print. So that's kind of like we're going digital,
So Kathy, rewind a little bit. So before they couldn't get the fabric direct from you guys, right?
No.
So this is all, you all have whipped this website up for consumers in dare I say overnight, but.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the inventory that's been sitting in our warehouse is now online. So it's, so everybody.
And is that just the licensure fabric or is that all of y'all's fabric?
It's all, say that again.
I said, is it just the licensure fabric, the ones that are, like you said, Disney or whatever, or is it all fabric?
It will be all fabric, but a lot of it, like they'll buy nursery line, they'll buy Susan Wing artist license as well. And then eventually we're going to do like our Springs archive. We're going to put that online as well. So then that will be, if you're looking for plaids and stripes and things like that, and there'll be several substrates that you can digitally print on.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, what people are doing now, but yeah.
That was a quick pick up the football, re-kick, re-punt. I don't even know what the words is, but.
Yeah, that was a quick shift.
Well, you kind of had to because the amount, and Brian knows this about inventory, the amount of inventory that we're stuck with is just, we had to do something very fast, and that's what we're doing.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. There's a comment from Brenda. She says their selection of fleece fabric, I don't know anywhere else that carries a lot of fleece.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah, the fleece and flannel. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
It's very true. I mean, their fleece selection was definitely extensive.
Yeah. And the flannel, a lot of people make baby quilts and things like that, or backings with the flannel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both solids and prints, really. They had pretty large
Good
programs.
solids. Yeah.
It's just crazy. I'm still sitting here like in awe. I can't even focus on what my next point of conversation was because Kathy's like, oh, we've already whipped this to that. So, I was thinking we would get to like the last 10 minutes of the episode and give everybody the hoorah of how to adapt to this JoAnn's change. And Kathy's like, oh.
And what is interesting, Lisa, I'll say this just because of my time with Springs. Creative. They've been preparing for this moment, and good for them that they're ready to go when the time is right. What most people don't know is Springs Creative really was instrumental in most of these companies going online in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So we were, they did a lot of work in terms of fulfilling a lot of the online orders for some of these, major customers that were blind to the consumer. The consumer wouldn't have known that they were coming out of our warehouse necessarily. Yeah. So, good for them. And, I think it's only fair that they get to get to carry the torch on and go direct with the consumer. Just because for so long, they had to kind of do it kind of behind the scenes. So.
Yeah. That's just, that's crazy. So, we're going to continue to talk about JoAnn's, but I want to go ahead and bring that word in, tariffs. So we can give Brian a little time to talk about some things. I know, well, and I shouldn't say just Brian. I think any company is thinking about this, but since we're talking quilting fabric, and we do know, prices are going to change, but Brian, you are supplying directly to the independent quilt shop owners. Woo, woo,
That's right.
like serendipitous. So knowing that you're the head of the USA side of Lewis and Irene, that is born out of the UK, where's your head in regards to how is JoAnn's somewhere that you didn't supply fabric to? Is that playing a role in your thought process for your business? And now also another whammy, other than JoAnn's closing, you're also thinking tariffs. Like, give us a little bit into Brian's brain.
Well, there's a lot going on. So let me answer the whole JoAnn's thing first, because that's maybe easier. And most people may be surprised, but I think, yes, I had a long history with JoAnn's. So personally, it's sad, but relatively, independent shop versus chain has always been a little bit of a battle, right?
Right.
They both have niches though. They've always had their niche. So to lose either one segment is a loss to the industry. Makes no doubt about that. And I will tell you, to me, we've mentioned some. I mean, somebody was on earlier talking about fleece, and Kathy's mentioned apparel fabrics, which is going to be a big void, I believe, in the market. But just in general, the opening price point, which I was also mentioned, it's key, because understand that crafting and the industry as a whole, you have to get someone in the door somewhere, right? Yeah. And it has to be affordable. I mean, if you're going to learn something new, you don't want to, spend an arm and a leg necessarily to do it. And so that it's going to get more difficult to do some of that. So, I'll say that. But
that's interesting. So you're saying the threshold to get people into any craft that potentially would go into JoAnn's. I didn't think about that, but you're saying now with the affordability.
Right. And so then it really becomes a challenge for the independent store owner, right? Of how are you going to encourage, and understand this, as much as I love the independent side of the business, but it can be quite intimidating, right? For a new person who has never sewn or never, quilted, to walk into a independent quilt shop, it can be daunting, because you've got all these beautiful hanging quilts. You're like, oh my gosh, where do I ever begin? Right.
Right.
So that's really the bridge that's going to have to be built here. And certainly independent shops have done a lot of work. I just think the onus is going to be even more on them to do that. In terms of offering, beginner sewing classes. Most people who have classrooms, Lisa, I know you do that, really nurturing and encouraging. That's where, if we all want to stay in this business, that's really where the monkey is on all of our backs, right? Is to continually encourage that creativity, that excitement, and, be welcoming in doing that.
I think with you saying that about encouraging and, making sure there's a space to encourage creativity and stuff, as soon as you said that, the first thing came through my head was, had JoAnn's shut down, let's say prior to the pandemic, or even 10 years ago, before a lot of people were comfortable or had the time to even explore going online to YouTube or to wherever to get, inspiration for, what is it, DIY or that kind of thing. That would have been an even bigger hurdle to overcome.
Absolutely.
Luckily now we do have, people on the internet that are always, trying to inspire creativity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
But and it's really interesting that you mentioned that, though, Brian, because quilting in general, one of the greatest things that Lisa and we talk about all the time is that it's a community. And that also can be daunting from somebody that's a newbie that's walking into this established community, feeling like an outsider. How do I, break in,
right.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do I fit? Where do I
Right.
fit? You know,
Right.
and will I be welcomed, or are they
Yeah.
going to critique me? You know,
Right. Right.
we're all artists. I mean, a quilter is an artist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's just the hardest thing, is to put yourself out there to say, oh my gosh, is somebody going to say something about my seams, or, you know, whatever, you
Right.
know, my
Right.
stitches not
Right.
straight, that I didn't put the binding on right, whatever, you know, so
It,
you do kind
it
of worry
is
about that.
true. I don't remember. It might have been Kathy that I was talking to, because she's popped in the shop several times lately. With Kathy's
And I have a
like,
comment about that, because
Yeah.
go ahead, you say something, but I have something also. Go ahead.
okay. So I don't know if it was Kathy that I was talking to, but somebody in the past, 5 to 7 days, we were talking about JoAnn's, and yarn got brought up. Was that you, Kathy?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
So we were talking about kind of how do people that are used to going to JoAnn's, and once again, staying in the quilting world, how do they even know quilt shops exist?
Mhm.
Because growing up where I was from, everybody knows crochet was my first craft. And then, there was, plenty of things down the road, but crochet stayed with me still to this day, and knitting. It wasn't until literally probably in my 30s, and one of the nurses that I used to work with, she knew I crocheted, and she said something about going down to the knit shop. And, call me hillbilly ignorant, but I did not know what a knit shop was. I did not know there was, for lack of better words, a premium place to go buy yarn, because I was feeling something she was working on. I was like, oh my God, that is so soft. What brand is that? And, I'm living in the world of Red Heart and, whatever the yarn is. And she's like, oh, that's alpaca. And I was like, what? So, through her, that opened up a whole world. And I literally had been crocheting, I mean, like definitely before 5 years old, and did not know about a premium yarn shop. So there's people out there that do sew that do not know about a local quilt shop, which is considered, like Brian said, a premium product.
Right. Yeah.
Now, as you were telling that, I was trying to think back, when was the first quilt shop that I actually heard about? And now that I think about it, I don't think I knew either. Like JoAnn's was well, that's not true. In Washington State, it was Ben Franklin. That was my first introduction. But even then, Ben Franklin was very similar to JoAnn Fabrics in that it was all encompassing, but it was out on the West Coast. And but yeah, and then out here was JoAnn's, and then it was through a coworker at JoAnn's that introduced me to, no, there's actual quilt shops and things like that out there.
I hear all the time in the shop when someone comes in and I find out it's the first time they've been there, because we've been brick and mortar for over 3 years now. And so when someone new comes in, especially when they say they're local, I'm just kind of like, how did you just find out about us? And so many times they will say, oh, I was up at JoAnn's in Charlotte, or I was over at Hobby Lobby, and I was looking for something that they didn't have, and they sent me to you. So, though I send people all the time to the big box because I can't carry everything, right? It's nice to know that they're also fielding over to the local quilt shops, but it's just amazing how you don't know until you know. And that things exist. I know our landlords, when I went to talk to them about our building, and I said, I want to put a quilt shop in, they just kind of laughed and was like, yeah, you won't be able to pay the rent. They're thinking I'm selling a quilt. And when, fast forward to, 6 months into the lease, they're kind of like, what's going on over there? There's all these cars. Like, they were just totally shocked. They had no clue. It's hilarious. Kathy, you said you wanted to comment.
No, I think, as much as things are going to go online, why I think I keep coming back to your store is just the community, like you said. And that's what I love, is as much as, our business is going online, I love as a consumer to come in and talk and just engage in people. And it's your tribe, because you go in and everybody else is in there sewing and looking at things, and you love to chit chat to everybody and see what they're making. And I'm excited that can still continue if, with the quilt shop. And I think that you don't get that in JoAnn. You just go in, you shop, you buy, but the community of quilt shops is fantastic. And that's what we all need right now. So I think that will be,
I think that is the strength. I totally agree, Kathy.
I feel like that's going to be a big trend.
Yeah.
I'm a tactile person though too.
Me too. Yes.
I want to feel that fabric, and Steve's behind the scenes. You guys always know that, he's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. I know he's like that, but being a graphic designer and things, he's about the color. And when you look at something online, it looks one color on the screen, but when you get it in person, it's not always the same.
Yeah. Well, even if it's the same, even if it's from the same number, like the same SKU number, it could be a different dye lot because of when they're run. So it could be just slightly different. Even the solids, especially, I've seen that even though it's the same SKU number, it can be slightly different. And but for me, the going into the shops is because especially if I'm pulling fabric for a quilt, I want to be able to mix and match, like put the fabrics next to each other and play around, pull this one, try that one. And you can't do that online. It's much more difficult.
It is. The funny thing is I will have people message me that do not live local and, maybe they follow us on social media or they ran onto our website or whatever. And they literally will, ask me about a piece of fabric that they already own. And then they'll be like, do you know that line? And most of the time, especially if it's a Moda, which is funny, Moda Tracy just popped up, but if it's a Moda line, for the most part, I do know it. And they'll be like, do you have something in the store to match that? So here I'm on the phone being their personal shopper, or I'm sending pictures. And sometimes they'll just be like, Lisa, I trust you. Just find me, some fabric that will match one particular piece they have. Moda Tracy says that's why Moda shows fabric samples, real fabric to see and touch. Absolutely. It makes a world of difference. When I do my Facebook Lives and I'm showing a fabric collection, it shows up different on the camera, no matter how well I tried to make it exact. And I have had people come in the store and they're making a beeline because something I've shown. And then they get in there and they're like, oh man, that red was a little bit more richer on camera. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it is, what it is. It's, what do you do? What do you do? Hey, Miss Nancy. Okay. So Brian, now that we've kind of talked about JoAnn's a little bit, let's talk about one of the beasts right now that no matter what industry you're in, the tariffs. How do you see, and we all know before people start yelling in the comments, this is a very fluid thing. And I will say, as a shop owner, I've received email after email or been in conference calls with a lot of the companies that I do business with or have partnered with. And, I'm not going to say what they say. I'll wait and let you go. And then I'll kind of comment on some of those things that are personal to Serendipitous. But knowing it's all fluid, kind of, what are we looking at now? What are we looking at 6 months?
So, what we all know is that it is very fluid. And so I think all of us want the crystal ball, right? We want to know exactly how it's all going to wind up. Unfortunately, we're not going to know that for just a little bit longer. And so really what's really key is to, my perspective as a business owner is to be patient, which is hard for me to do, right? I mean, when it has such a potentially big impact on your business. However, I'm not at the negotiating table as much as I want to be, right? And trying to get these tariffs kind of taken care of. But what I will say is it's very important for the people in the industry to be diversified, because I think you're going to have to be very fluid. Now, in regards to my company, we're 99% in South Korea. So of course, South Korea, fortunately seems to be one of the countries that will be, at the top of the negotiating table, right? But irregardless, even though there's a pause, understand that there has been enacted an increase. At the end of the day, I mean, it's 10% across the board, period. Now, obviously, we know China's a lot worse than that. And thank goodness I'm not relying on China for my supply chain because I might be here in tears. I mean, because it will have significant impacts on the companies that are doing that. Now, you know, that's not me, but I can guarantee you those folks are really looking to see where they can diversify outside.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it just depends. So we've just continued to battle with freight, and people don't realize how bad freight has gotten. Freight continues to be expensive. So there's a lot of pricing pressure on the business, you know, as a whole. But I will tell you that we're pretty firm in our commitment to minimize what, I mean, obviously, if a 50% tariff gets passed and that's what's agreed upon, you know, certainly part of that's going to have to go to the, you know, to the end consumer. There's just no way around it. But I will say most of us in the industry are working as hard as we possibly can to minimize. Is it going to have an impact? Absolutely. Do we know what kind of impact? It's going to depend. And it's going to depend on where the product is coming from.
Right.
So I will tell you, we talked about apparel fabrics. There is a lot of apparel fabrics that are out of China.
Yeah.
So in that case, I think you're going to see a much bigger impact than you would in the quilting side. And that's just my personal belief, mainly because so much of the quilting, is there quilting fabric produced in China? Absolutely. The bulk of it is done. And I think
in Korea.
I saw Tracy, you know, post too. It's either Korea, South Korea specifically, obviously, and then Japan.
Yeah. We got Pakistan.
Yeah, Pakistan.
A much bigger player than probably people realize.
Yeah.
And don't get too surprised, but Turkey is in there too. We don't hear about Turkey a lot.
I was going to say that's new to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Turkey's in that mix too. And so I think for some of those countries, could it open up an opportunity?
Absolutely.
And India's another place.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's certainly a lot of fabrics come from.
I think it's funny. Sharon Riles, she made a perfect comment that was going to go to one of my questions that I'm eager to hear all three of you guys chime in about. She says, I may have to get my loom out and weave my own fabrics. So let's talk about domestic, right? We do have some fabric being printed in the US, specialty, you know, like if you want to have some custom fabric and stuff. Brian and Kathy probably can answer this better, definitely, than me and Rona, because you guys are in it. But do you see USA production going up? And obviously, that's not going to be as quick a turnaround as Kathy's company's website. But what is it? What do you think, or what do you see about that?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity, absolutely. But you've got to understand this too. Anything produced domestically is automatically more expensive too.
Yeah.
So it's just more expensive to do.
We have to weigh it. Yeah.
And so it's, you know, whether you're having a higher tariff or you're producing domestically, how it's going to shake out and how even it really gets, you know, price wise, I think is still anybody's guess, just based on so much uncertainty with exactly where the tariff rates are going to, you know, wind up. But could it? Yes. Is there tons of infrastructure here? No. Has the technology improved significantly? Yes. To probably expedite some of that, you know, from a digital printing. But even understand this, for a company to go in and say, okay, Lewis and Irene, we're going to print our own fabrics, right? The significant capital investment and how long it would take you to get a return on that investment is
monstrous.
Still the biggest challenge. So
absolutely. So Brenda says, as a consumer, I expect prices to go up, but do you think getting inventory is going to be impacted badly?
Short term, no, and I'll tell you why. Understand this: the supply chain's full. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm ordered out all the way through September right now. So, I mean, we've got goods on the water or on a boat, whatever. So this is not a. Here's what I do know: there will not be a shortage of fabric. There will not be a shortage of fabric anytime soon. So,
Listen, I have to laugh about anyone that is. Oh, let me back up. I have to laugh at any current quilter that would be worried about a shortage of fabric anytime soon, because we all know that quilters have their
biggest
fabric
order
stash
ever.
stocked up like there is an how do you pronounce that? Apocalypse? I can't. I don't read
Hey,
those.
I just packed my stash. I got rid of a whole bunch in the garage sale, and I still, but I'm still gonna go out and buy more, of course, you know.
Of course.
So I just don't foresee, because Brian said a very important word earlier, and all three of us was nodding yes when he said it. The word patience. Letting the water, ebb and flow, and see what happens in regards to tariffs. And I said earlier, I had received numerous messages from numerous companies that I do business with, and every one of them, Brian, that was pretty much what they were saying, was patience. I will say, on the sewing machine side of life, that was something, price hikes was already coming. And, I've been telling, the citizens of Serendipitous, like, listen, if you were thinking you were going to buy a sewing machine, from, a year from now, maybe 2 years, you may want to think about go ahead and getting that. While there is stuff in the warehouse, and those price increases haven't, hit it yet for sure. Tracy commented that Moda, yes, they are, booked out for September to October on fabric. So supply chain for sure. Nancy says, and I'm saying information on Puerto Rico, you cannot find such beautiful fabrics. Different countries, that's definitely higher. Stefan, this is Rona's husband, says lies. She sold like one fat.
Okay, read the next one. Read the next one.
Just kidding.
She sold a lot
of
okay, so real quick, what happened was I actually had a whole bunch of fabric, and I even had like 4 kits. I had some notions and everything. And I had my friend Georgie put out an e-blast to the local guild, the Quilt Guild out here. And holy moly, we opened at 9. Some of those ladies showed up at 8:30, and there was a line.
That is the great thing. And it was one of my talking points. Quilters are resilient. I mean, let me tell you, they're going to find a way to quilt no matter what. God forbid we went a year and couldn't get fabric into this country. These quilters, all they have to do is throw a little fabric exchange party, and then it'll feel like all new fabric to them anyway. I mean, seriously, come on. It's hilarious. Brenda says, I'm concerned about new quilters.
That's right.
Yeah, new quilters. That goes back to Brian saying, being able to get new people into any craft, without, JoAnn's being one of the major players, that threshold. But yeah, Brenda, I'm not giving up any of my stash for, friend, family, or foe. Yeah, you're not getting it.
Well, interestingly enough, when we were talking earlier, you might have seen my screen bumbling around. What I've got my computer propped up on is something that we participate in that I kind of actually want to share with the audience, if it's okay, Lise. This is called needle travel.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
All right. So for those of you who are not maybe local to Lisa or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I go find somebody near me?
Mm-hmm.
Needletravel.com, right? It's got every fabric, yarn, stitchery shop in the US, and it's done by state.
Yeah.
So
What?
this is a fantastic resource that's
Don't they
available.
have an app for? I think there's an app too that you can download an app, and it's fantastic.
They
Just what
do
we
have
all
an
need.
app. And Brian, it's funny you brought that up because we sold those in the shop for a little bit, but I was actually going to point out towards the end of this episode, if those that are used to going to JoAnn's and, you know, even you're used to going to local quilt shops, Rona's website is a fabulous place, just like Brian was saying, that book, to find out quilt shops. And if you have a quilt shop near you that's not on the website, Rona, how can they inform you? So,
Yeah, so the website, I have lists of all the quilt shops by state. I don't print a book because they change so often. But they're just quilt shops where needle travel includes like yarn shops and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's on the website, the RonaTheRiveter.com. It's quilt shops, shows, museums, quilting retreat centers, all of that is up on the website. And yeah, and there's Google Maps interactive on every list. And then, but yeah, if there's a quilt shop that you know of that's not on the list, or one that maybe moved or closed, there's a link on every single page to let me know so that we can try and keep it updated as much as possible.
Right.
absolutely.
And find whoever your favorite brand is. I mean, you know, we're hoping it's Lewis and Irene. Tracy, Rhoda, right? You know, it doesn't matter. Any of our sites, most all of the manufacturing sites would also be able to direct you where you can buy their fabrics. So you have a particular brand that you just are really in love with. That's another course.
And we keep talking fabrics, but notions, you know, let me tell you, I have a million spotlights with magnifying glasses, you know, and I will tell you, every one of those, if you all come to Serendipitous, I don't carry lights in the shop, which this may have to change. But the reason I didn't carry lights in the shop is because everyone that's in my house came from JoAnn's. And I would always get it when there was like a 50 or 60% off coupon, because you can't afford them otherwise. They're very expensive. So, you know, just in that regard, we've mentioned it before, affordability, which maybe this is why JoAnn's is bankrupt, but they're coupons. Like,
well, we said it for a long time. I mean, me and Kathy, how many conversations we have when we were at Springs together, was that, you know, hey, they're really almost addicting their customer. I mean, why would you ever go in a store without a coupon, right?
Right.
The addiction to it, and it was really unhealthy, and it became unattainable, and they couldn't, you know, keep it, and so then they tried to scale it back, and then there was a whole revolt. I mean, there would be these whole groups of people that would go online and go after.
Oh yeah.
So
there have been customers after customers that have came into the shop, you know, over the past 3+ years and be like, you know, I really wish you carried such and such, so I don't have to go to JoAnn's up in Charlotte, you know, because they don't want to make the trek. Not that it's that far, but my answer would be like, listen, I use that product as well. However, I cannot even buy it wholesale to put in the shop at the price JoAnn sells it for.
Wow.
And you know, that is horrible. Before I forget it, Brian, Tracy screamed out, she loves her some Lewis and Irene as well.
that's right. I saw that.
But yeah, it's I think Tracy's leaving. Bye, Tracy. You have a good evening. Thanks for tuning in as long as you could. But you know, it was definitely one of those mindsets that they created for the customers. And then as a business person, I don't see how it was sustainable at all.
And then after a while, they started accepting other like competitors' coupons too. So it just compounded everything else.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, prices of notions is, you know, potentially to change.
I think that could be a much bigger challenge. You know, I'm not on that side of the business, but I will tell you the bulk of that's coming out of China. So it will have pretty significant impacts on notions, I would imagine, at least in the short term.
I think so too. I think we're, going to be okay as long as the warehouses are,
Yeah, anybody
stocked.
that was smart knew this was potential was coming. If you've been to your local car dealership, I mean, even with aluminum and steel and all those, have you been to by a local car dealership lately? There are cars everywhere because these dealerships have been they're trying to get ahead of it. So they've tried to bring in a lot of extra stock before, the sticker shock hits them. So to kind of push that off as long as they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stefan says he has a question for the group. He says, do you think that with JoAnn's closing, if this will increase business for brick and mortar, such as the mom and pop shops or boutique brands? Who wants to comment?
Well, I think yes and no. I think it will increase for specific ones. Like quilters, we have quilt shops to go to, and like knitters and crocheters, there's several yarn places that they can go to. But like Kathy, you were talking about apparel, they really don't. There's not a lot of apparel specific or shops that are out there. And even like Hobby Lobby and Michael's, or well, I guess Michael's is online, I'm not sure. But their fabric selection was not really much apparel at all. It was mostly quilting stuff. So yeah, I think it depends on which crafting.
Yeah.
I think some will do better than others.
Yeah.
Does that mean we have to go to New York for our apparel fabric?
Yeah, New York does have apparel shops.
Yeah.
That's true. The fabric district.
It's the chance, unless you're there, it didn't really help you. So.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, it's the price point. It becomes a price point issue again.
Yeah.
Like the independent quilt side, an independent apparel shop is certainly going to be more expensive than what you would get at.
Definitely.
I wonder too, Sharon, I agree. It's time to take a trip to New York City.
Yes.
So, I wonder what you all think about this, but in regards to purchasing online, we've already talked, you don't have the community, like when you're walking into a shop, you don't get to feel it. The color may be askew from the computer screen to when you actually get it in person. Like it's serendipitous, we started online. We've been online for over 7+ years, but when it is cut yardage, there is no return, right? So if you get the wrong color green, you're stuck with that wrong color green. Now, don't get me wrong. Quilters, we're all about it. We'll just add it to our stash and move on. But for those that are apparel, are they, well, just fabric in general, I shouldn't say apparel, but I think people are going to be more sluggish to buy for the fear of, I don't know what I'm getting and I can't return it. And that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's definitely a barrier.
Yeah.
For like apparel, for quilting, we know we always want to shop for cotton, but for like apparel, I had I made my great nieces, because I don't have grandchildren, so I sew for my great nieces and nephews, but I was just looking for like a camel hair wool coat. I was going to make him, the little guy, a little coat. So I kind of knew that I needed camel hair, I needed a wool. And so it was easy to just go online and get it. And I knew that the color would be okay. I think also like for apparel, you kind of know your fabric stuff that you can shop online. You're looking for certain, Oxford or like, it's all those kind of different kind of apparel fabrics. Whereas, so you kind of can shop online. I feel like with quilting, I don't know what my point is. What would my point be? But I'm just saying, maybe it's easier to shop online for apparel than it is quilting. Because I don't know. What do you?
Well, I don't know.
There's a question.
Well, that's
based on
she's saying hi, guys.
Based on the people that would come in when I was working at JoAnn's and at the cutting counter. So I would talk to people all the time about all the different types of fabrics. And a lot of times, especially going back to the new crafters and the new sewers, they didn't necessarily know what, like they would have a pattern, and the pattern you could use, 4 or 5 different types of fabric. Well, which one should I pick? And, of course, what you're making will depend on the fabric you use, what the drape is like and all of that. So that's going to be a big hurdle too, is especially for the newbies, is to, be able to play around with the different types of fabrics.
Yeah.
My boss, which Brian knows very well, he says where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And that's how we're dealing with everything right now. So that's
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to write that down. I like that.
Kathy, I said the same thing early in the week, which I've said it numerous times. You know, there was a lot of negative with COVID, right? But there was so much positive that came out of that storm.
Oh, yeah.
And what the crafting industry is going through by losing one of the bigger box stores, you know, and then the uncertainty of the tariff, not tariff, whatever's happening there. There is a lot of opportunity. Brian has used that word a million times tonight, opportunity. And we're going to find our way for sure. I will be very curious. I know Brian is supposedly going. Kathy, I can't remember if you said you're going to be able to make it or not, but H&H Americas is in May, the first week of May, I think, in Chicago. And last year was my first year attending. And to see, and Brian, you might remember how many different countries was there. I don't remember. The number was amazing.
Yeah. I think it was over 100.
Yeah. So I'm curious now to see and be on that floor at H&H and hear these conversations. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, no, there'll be definitely hot topics of conversation, I would imagine, just around how we're all diversified. And that's the thing, you know, we're competitors, but this industry is a fairly tight knit industry too.
It is.
So believe it or not, I won't say there's not trade secrets or whatever you want to say, but in general, we're going to help each other through it, you know? And that's what we do. And it's the same, just like this community. I mean, it's just like you said with COVID, that's what we did.
Yeah.
The quilters are the ones that stepped up to the table, right, and started cranking out masks when nobody else could, and they fulfilled the need.
The reason I laugh at that, guys, is because one of my shoppers was trying to track Brian down. She could not remember his name. And she's like, the guy that blah, blah, blah. She goes, I really need to get a hold of him. During the pandemic, he came and sold fabric out the back of his car in the cul-de-sac.
That's what you do.
Brian is the best salesperson I've ever met. I'm telling
you pivot, and you turn it into an opportunity.
Yeah.
My point is, quilters will find.
We find a way.
That's right.
They will. So the moral of the story is tonight, guys, I cannot believe we are coming to the end of our hour, but hopefully those of you that have watched have enjoyed this conversation. If you're watching it on replay in the days to come, still put your comments in. We want to hear your stories, your favorite memories of JoAnn's. None of us want to forget JoAnn's. And also any concerns you may have. If we don't know the answer, we'll try to get you answers. But I just love it. The moral of the story is crafters and quilters will find a way to keep on crafting and quilting. It's just going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't think, the topic of tonight's episode kind of felt a little heavy to me and Rona. And of course, we was talking to Steve about it, but we're like, at the end of the day, it's a conversation everybody wants to hear.
Sure.
But it absolutely, there's so much sunshine in it. It's all good. Miss Christine says, good night and thanks. And Stefan says, if you quilt it, they will come. Oh my God.
That's a great one.
Stefan's been loading a house up today. He's delirious.
He's exhausted.
I love it.
Exactly. Kathy and Brian, thanks for being here with me and Rona tonight.
Thank you for inviting us. This is great.
Absolutely.
Great.
Any last thoughts that either one of you guys or both of you guys want to end with tonight?
Just be fluid.
That's right.
Yeah. Hang on.
That's right. Hang on. But I don't think it's the end of the world. Don't panic just yet.
No.
Don't panic. That would be my real big thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely not. Sharon says, my very first quilt was made from fabrics from JoAnn's. I never quilted it, so need to drag it out and get it done. Yes, you better get it done. It's the end of an era for sure.
Yeah.
Becky says bye. And guys, thank you so much for tuning
you.
in. We'll be right back here third Tuesday night in May. keep your eye out for the topic. We know Rona's on the move. We're not even asking her anymore where she's going, where she's been. Just know she will be here third Tuesday night next month. Guys, thank you so much, and we totally appreciate you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.